Howdy y'all, Christi here with Little Salty Homesteader. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm actually going to be starting basil seeds. So I thought that I would bring you guys along and kind of talk to you about companion planting while I start this basil. I'm also starting this Agastache Texas Hummingbird Mint Heather Queen. I read that you can use these to make teas, and they're really cute flowers, and of course pollinators love them. So you guys know I'm all about planting for the pollinators, so I'm going to start that as well as all of these different basils. So let me just open my bag of soil here because I do have a new one that I'm going to be using today, and then we will get started. So for this go around, I am still using Fox Farm soil, but in the previous seed starting stuff I used Ocean Forest, and in today's, or for now, I have Happy Frog. It's the same company, just a different blend a bit. They're both still like super light and fluffy and, you know, really fantastic soils. The difference is that HEB, which is a grocery store chain here in Texas, sells the big bags of the Happy Frog soil for a lot cheaper than I can get the Ocean Forest soil at other garden supply centers. So I opted to save $12 to $16 per bag and try out the Happy Frog and see how I like it. But anyway, while I fill up this tray to get the basil going, let's go ahead and start talking about companion planting. So companion planting is is the idea of planting two or more different plant types together, so that one or more of the plants benefit from them growing together, right? So a lot of times the plants are planted together to boost the flavor of something. So a lot of people will say if you plant basil with your tomatoes, then your tomatoes will taste better. So a lot of times people will companion plant for that reason. We'll get more into basil as a companion plant later on in this video. They will also plant companion plants in order to improve soil conditions. So here in North Texas, we have really heavy, dense clay soil. So if I wanted to do in-ground gardening, one of the things that I could companion plant to kind of help that is radishes, the really shallow root stuff that will kind of get in there and break up that clay and sort of create some airflow and different things. Another way to improve the soil health is to plant crops that are nitrogen fixing, meaning they capture the nitrogen out of the air, and then as they trap it in their roots, once that plant dies and the roots break back down into the soil, all that nitrogen is released to there. So it will improve the health of those heavy nitrogen feeders like broccoli and tomatoes. And then the third reason, which is the most common reason people will typically companion plant, is to help repel pests. So again, a lot of people will use a type of radish called white icicle radish to try to prevent squash bugs with their squash plants. People will plant a lot of different varieties of flowers and herbs to prevent hornworms on their tomatoes. Other herbs can be planted to bring in beneficial insects that will take care of those bad bugs like the hornworms and stuff, which we're going to get into here in just a couple of minutes. So those are like the three main reasons people will companion plant. One of the original ideas of companion planting came from the Native Americans with their Three Sisters gardens, and they would plant the corn, which would be like the very tall thing that acted as a trellis, and then they would plant squash that would vine out across the ground, and it would create, you know, shade on the ground so the soil and the roots of the other plants wouldn't become so hot. And then they would plant beans, which is one of those nitrogen fixing plants. So as it died off, it would deposit nitrogen back into the soil, but that corn acted as the trellis for the beans to climb up. So everybody kind of worked together to create this harmonious garden space with just those three plants. in your gardens, I encourage you to plant as many things as you have the space for. I'm not going to tell you, you know, don't plant your potatoes next to your carrots or whatever some of those sayings say, because that's something that you have to learn on your own, because different gardens, different growing environments are all going to have things that do well and not so well, right? So plant your garden however you see fit and however you get the maximum, you know, either the maximum benefit of like beautiful flowers or the maximum harvest, whatever it is that your goal is. But there are going to be plants that require the same resources. So those heavy nitrogen feeders like broccoli and tomatoes, you don't want to plant them together, you know, right next to each other, close buddy, because they will be competing for some of those same nutrients, and one or both of them will become stunted, and you know that affects your overall harvest. So try to plant things together that require different things out of the soil. So like root vegetables, like carrots, beets, those things, they require more potassium, and then like the leafier things require more nitrogen. So broccoli, tomatoes are also heavy nitrogen feeders. So if they require the same resources, try to spread them out a little bit, put something in between them that uses different resources so that everything isn't like competing for the same stuff. But other than that, some companion plants include flowers. This will attract bees and pollinators, which will help pollinate those squashes and cucumbers and things that are not self-pollinating, like tomatoes and peppers. Some flowers, which we'll also get into here in a little bit, will help repel pests like hornworms, aphids, whiteflies, some of those nasty ickies that we don't really want in our garden. And then you also want to include, I'm totally going to butcher how this word is said, so I apologize. You also want to include umbellariffus. I'm going to try to include the spelling of that, so you can Google it and maybe there might be like pronunciation help, I don't know. Umbellariffus. So these are those herbs that have rounded or flat flower heads. So if you've ever grown cilantro or dill and let them go to seed, you'll notice that the flower heads kind of poof out. Okay, so those are going to be the plants that draw in predator wasps and other beneficial insects that are going to wipe out the not so fun insects. Predator wasps will actually assist you in taking care of a hornworm problem. So I try to plant dill kind of all over the place. My seeds are flying all over my patio. So you also want to plant nitrogen fixing plants. Like I said earlier, those beans, they draw the nitrogen out of the air, and then as they store it in their roots, they die off, and then the nitrogen goes back into the soil. Another nitrogen fixing plant that I recently found out is nitrogen fixing is okra, which is fantastic because here in Texas, okra grows so well. So you can plant a ton of it and then boost your garden soil health after it dies off. So my top 5, I'm gonna go through my top 5 favorite companion plants. There's a lot more that I'm not including on this list. These are just the 5 that I'm going to grow no matter what, year in, year out. So the first one is basil. I mean, it's in pizza. So aside from that, some of the reasons that you want to include basil are that it grows really easily in the summer. It is a fantastic companion plant for your It is a fantastic companion plant for your nightshades. So like your tomatoes, your eggplants, and your peppers. The reason why is because it helps repel hornworms, and it will, after it reaches the flowering stage and starts to go to seed, it also attracts other pollinators. As far as using basil, you can use it fresh, obviously. I mean, you can put it in your pasta, your pizza, pesto, different sauces. You can also make tea with it. My kids like to have it with like a basil lemonade type drink. So you like steep it like you do tea, and then you just add it you ice it down and chill it, and then you just add it to your lemonade. It's really good that way too. And then you can dry it. You can freeze dry it, preserve it, store it, put it away, give it away as gifts. I mean, once you have one basil plant that gets gigantic, you're going to have basil for the rest of the year, you know, after you preserve it. So it's a handy plant to have around. It grows really well in containers, raised beds, and in the ground. So you can grow it in pretty much any garden space that you have without too much trouble. And then a specific variety of basil called Hori or Tulsi basil. It does have some medicinal properties. It can improve breathing, reduce the duration of colds and flus. It can reduce anxiety and depression, reduces plaque, and can reduce the risk of cancer. Now, I am not a medical professional. This is what I have read in different medicinal herb books. So I am not stating this to be a fact. Please note that I included can improve, not that it absolutely will. Obviously, speak to a medical professional about that if you have any interest in using it for your medicinal needs. The anxiety and depression part sounds pretty good to me though, because I am a anxious person by nature. So my second favorite is a flower, and it is marigolds. These are really easy to grow. These are another plant that grows really well in the ground, in containers, in raised beds, whatever. In the green stock, it grows really well too. However you want to grow it, it's going to do just fine. It's an annual flower. It attracts beneficial insects and pollinators. It will attract ladybugs and also parasitic wasps, so yay. And then there is a toxin found in the plant, so it's found in the roots actually. So the more you grow marigolds in a specific spot, the more this toxin is present within the soil, because as the roots die off, and it will help eliminate root-eating nematodes. Like I said, it's easy to grow. You can grow it directly from seed. You can buy transplants from the store. They also attract other pollinators like bees and butterflies. There are some varieties that have edible petals. I have not personally eaten them, so I can't speak on how they taste. I imagine they taste like a flower. They do make a great companion plant in your vegetable garden for most vegetables. I'm not exactly sure what you cannot plant them with. I just plant them everywhere, and I haven't had any issues where, you know, they prevent something else from growing or something else prevents them from growing. Everything that I've planted them near, they both seem to grow perfectly well. So I'm not sure what you can't plant them with. A lot of people, for their tomato gardens, to prevent hornworms and other pests completely, they will plant a tomato plant. Like, let's say we have a 7-gallon container, they'll plant a tomato plant in that container, and then they will have a basil plant and a marigold. So all three live together in peaceful harmony, repelling pests, tasting wonderful, making pizza without the marigolds on the pizza. That is just one of the many ways that you can use companion planting within your own garden. Since I'm transitioning to raised beds, I will be placing the marigolds and basil down the middle of the beds. So in the front and the back will be like vegetables, and then the flowers and herbs will be going down the middle to act as those companion plants. Another fantastic companion plant, this is my third favorite, is nasturtium. Now, my last video, I was actually planting nasturtium seeds, so I talked to you a little bit about how they are edible and they, you know, do help repel some pests. So just a little bit more information about nasturtiums is they are a really pretty annual flower. Some of them are like dwarf varieties, some of them kind of cascade and trail out, and they're really beautiful. They're often used as trap crops. So what a trap crop is my seeds are going all over the patio. A trap crop is something that you plant knowing that it's going to get covered in bugs. Once it reaches the point where it's covered in bugs, you yank it out and you throw it in the garbage and you put a new plant in its place. So nasturtiums are often used as a trap crop for I wrote it down because I can't always remember off the top of my head. Okay, so trap crop for aphids and squash bugs. I knew it was squash bugs, but I couldn't remember the aphids part. So people will plant them, let the aphids just be drawn to them, or the squash bugs, definitely the squash bugs. And then once they're covered with whatever that insect is, they pull the entire plant out, throw it away, start anew. You can plant a new nasturtium, you can plant, you know, something else, whatever you would like. They also attract beneficial insects like those hoverflies. Hoverflies are great because they actually feed on aphids. And then they also attract other pollinators, bees, butterflies, all of the little different fluttering, cute flying things that help pollinate our beautiful plants. And nasturtium is actually edible. The leaves, the flowers, and the seeds are all edible. The leaves and flowers are kind of peppery. You can add the flowers to salads. You can make pesto with the leaves. And then the seeds you can brine like you do capers. So you'll take the young seeds whenever they're still kind of green and a little soft. And you can use them just like you would use capers, but they're going to be a little bit bigger than the caper berries are. Now, there's a bunch of different types of nasturtiums. There's, like I said, the dwarf, and then there's like the trailing cascading ones. You can get variegated leaves, or types with variegated leaves. I have a couple growing in there, or you can just get like solid color leaves, but the flowers themselves come in every color across the rainbow, with different mixes of each color, all within the same plant. Really stunning, really attractive, adds a lot of texture and visual appeal to your garden space. When they die off, they actually add some nutrients back into the soil, including calcium, nitrogen, potassium, and some other minerals. So this contributes to the overall soil health, which, as you guys remember from 15 minutes ago, that's one of the reasons to plant companion plants. There are some studies that say that nasturtium may have some medicinal properties, like being an antifungal, and also providing vitamin C. Now, providing vitamin C, that one's pretty easy to prove, especially a lot of leafy greens, a lot of the greens like collards and kale and stuff have a lot of vitamin C. So I believe that for the nasturtium too. Two more in the top 5. So the next one is calendula. Calendula is a cold, hardy annual flower. Now, it's not going to last whenever it's like super duper cold. Whenever it got down to 8 or 9 degrees or whatever in January, all of my calendula died off. But they will survive, you know, light freezes. So if it's 28, 29 degrees Fahrenheit out, they should be okay. They are part of the marigold family, but their flower petals look more like daisies and not like the traditional marigold that you're used to seeing with kind of the crinkly looking petals. The blossoms are edible, but they can taste bitter or spicy. Sometimes it is called the poor man's saffron. Calendula is known to have some healing properties, especially for skincare. So sunburns, chapped lips, eczema, calendula has been known to help with those things. It will attract, because it's a flower, it will attract pollinators like bees and butterflies, while also repelling pests like those dreaded hornworms and whiteflies. You can companion plant calendula with tomatoes, cucumbers, basil, peppers, salad greens, and more. So this is going to be another one that's going to be planted with my basil and marigolds down the middle rows of my garden beds. Right now I have 3. I will soon have 4 because of some articles that have been published and are being published. So super exciting. So down the middle of all 4 of those raised beds, I'm going to include those 4 companion plants. The last one is well, I'm going to lump in okra with this too because I'm growing them both for the same reason. So beans and okra, I'm growing both of these, or using both of these as companion plants for the nitrogen fixing properties. So obviously I'm going to get a lot of food off of those too. So I'm going to let them do their thing, harvest the food, then I'll let them die back and let those roots benefit the soil with the nitrogen that's going to be deposited. Beans are really, especially the bush variety, they're a really fast growing crop. With beans, there's two types. There's like the pole beans, which grow really long vines and they continue to produce beans right up until the plant dies. And then there's the bush variety, where it kind of just makes all its beans close to all at one time. And then they stay kind of smaller and compact. What I grow is the bush variety of beans, simply because I don't have trellis systems yet in order to grow the runner or pole variety of beans. And then for okra, one of the other benefits of growing okra, besides it being yummy and it being a nitrogen fixer, is that it's going to get absolutely massive. My okra last year, I had some that were probably 11, 12 feet tall. But I cut them down, and I actually had the stalks like on the patio for a while. I was waiting for them to die out enough for me to just be able to break them and put them into lawn bags for the trash service to pick up. But they get absolutely massive. So what that means is that they're going to provide a really good shade structure for some of those things that you don't necessarily want overheating, like peppers. I grow the okra with my peppers, and they're going to act as shade for all of my pepper plants that I have. There's a bee. They're going to act as shade for all of the pepper plants that are going to be planted in the raised beds with them. So as the sun reaches the peak of the day and it becomes astronomically hot, where we don't even want to be outdoors, the okra, that's the temperature that it loves. That's the temperature that it's just going to take off, and it's just going to grow like crazy. And then because it's going to be so tall and so leafy, it's actually going to cast some shade over all of those pepper plants that kind of tend to suffer once it reaches those crazy summer heat temperatures. So that is another benefit to growing okra that makes it a pretty good companion plant. So if you're growing bush beans, you can grow them with almost any vegetable in your garden. Pole beans you can grow with anything except brassicas, and then shallow rooted root vegetables like beets, onions, and garlic, simply because those roots on both are so shallow that the bean roots will stunt the growth of those root vegetables that you're trying to get to bulb up. Other common companion plants include dill, cilantro, radishes, celery, carrots, and squash, and they all provide different benefits as far as being companion plants, whether it's, soil health, pest control, whatever it may be. Those are, like I said, that was just my top 5 list. Those are the ones that I always grow intermingled within the rest of my garden. There's a ton more. There's books out there that will tell you plant this with this to get this, and those can be good, but you also have to take your gardening space into account. Like some recommendations will say to plant carrots with tomatoes. Obviously that's not going to work here in North Texas because it gets so hot here whenever it's tomato season that carrots are not going to grow. Carrots are a cool weather crop here. So you just, absolutely read those, try to implement some of those practices, but just keep in mind different growing environments in states like Maine or Vermont compared to growing environments in Louisiana or Texas, or, hot versus cold. So now that it took me 24 minutes to put soil into here, I'm going to start planting some basil. Let me actually pick up those packets that flew all over the patio. Go lay down. Go lay down. Don't eat my dirt. Thank you. Dogs are funny. Okay, so basil. Basil is probably one of my favorite things overall that I grow in my garden besides tomatoes and peppers, because it's really fragrant. So you can go out and just like run your hand across it, and then your entire garden space smells absolutely delightful. And then once it goes to flower, it's really fun to see all the little flying insects coming to get little snacks from it. And then obviously, you know, pizza, but all of the other wonderful things that you add basil to. Bruschetta. Last year I made a grilled chicken sandwich with like a cherry tomato confit, and then I made like a garlic aioli to put on the bread, and oh my god, that's probably the best sandwich I've ever made. I will kind of talk about some of these varieties of basil that I'm growing. I don't know a whole lot about some of these. Some of these I'm growing, you know, kind of for fun. But I'm growing some because they're absolutely beautiful. Some I plan on using for tea, and then they're all being grown for the garden benefits. So all of these seeds, basil seeds, are pretty tiny as well. They're all going to be surface sow. So what that means is I'm just going to sprinkle them on the surface, and then I'm just going to gently pat them into the soil so that as they sprout, those roots are already kind of set, and then they don't have to like fight. But surface sow means that they require the light in order to germinate. Make up your own words. So that is the Agastache. I'm not 100% sure how to say that. Okay, so some of the fun varieties that I'm growing are blue spice basil. Now this one has like a vanilla and basil combination fragrance. It smells absolutely amazing. It is my favorite one whenever I'm out in the garden to kind of brush my hands across to get that, you know, those scents floating into the air. And then whenever it goes to flower, it has like these coral peachy colored flowers. So it's really beautiful. It's not like your other basils where the flowers are just white, and it smells so good. It is my favorite smelling basil. I think its best use is probably in tea because of that vanilla note. Maybe it would be good in an ice cream. I haven't tried that, so I'm not 100% sure. But I grow this one every year just because I love the way it smells. And then I love those orangey, coral, peachy flowers. And I'm putting several seeds in each cell. This is probably basil overkill, but because I plant it everywhere, I think it'll be okay. And then, you know, if I do have too much, then I can go give it to my in-laws, my sister, whoever may need it. What was that one, Odie? I'm looking for cardinal basil. Now cardinal basil, this one is really interesting because, I'll show you the artwork here on this packet. Cardinal basil is really interesting because whenever it goes to flower, it has these beautiful deep red flower heads. The pollinators go absolutely bananas over it, so I love to grow it for that. The leaves are a little bit, I don't know if tougher is the right word, stiffer. They're not as like tender as sweet basil leaves. They're a little firmer, but you can still use them like you do regular basil. It's not really like a whole lot of flavor difference, just kind of a textural difference. And then of course the different flower heads. All right, so just in case you guys haven't seen basil seeds, that's kind of what they look like. Just little, almost like black pepper, like crushed black pepper. So, like I said, just surface sowing all of these, and then at the end I'll just go press them into the soil. These will get a humidity dome, and then they will go onto a heat mat until they begin to germinate, and then they'll go under my grow lights until it is time to start hardening them off to bring them out. The next one is cinnamon basil. This one is definitely one that goes in like a tea blend. My friend used it in like Italian cuisine and she said that it was great, but to me, because it does have that cinnamon note, it's best for basil tea, basil lemonade, those type of things. The next one I don't know a whole lot about. This will be my first year growing it. It is Corsican basil, if I remember correctly. It is, it has dual colored leaves, so the leaves are green and purple, which is probably why I'm growing it. But I imagine it's going to have similar basil flavor notes so you know, use it in all of your savory dishes that you would add basil to typically. But since this is my first year growing this one, I'm excited to see what happens. All right, so the next one is dark purple opal basil. This is one that I've grown several years in a row now. It's one of my favorites. It's exactly what it sounds like, dark purple basil. Its leaf structure is just like the sweet Genovese basil. It's just very dark purple. It's stunning. It smells really nice. It tastes really nice. Pollinators still love it once it starts to go to flower. Just adds a different color component to the garden compared to just the green basil varieties. Dwarf Greek. This one is also a new to me variety. I have not grown this one before. It's going to be a more compact basil because it is a dwarf variety. I'm not entirely sure what the flavor profile is, but it says Greek, so I would imagine it would be used in more Greek dishes than Italian. So that's pretty exciting. We eat a lot of different Mediterranean cuisine, including Greek. So there's going to be some garden updates to be made at the end of the season in regards to a lot of these new to me basils and then some other new to me varieties. And then the next one is just the typical Genovese basil. This is the one that you see whenever you go to the store and get fresh basil from the produce department. This is what is typically on, if you get like a margarita pizza, this is the basil that's going to be on it. If you get dried basil from the store, it's likely this one. So this is just your like most common basil variety. So when you think of basil, this is probably what you think of, is this Genovese basil. So because I am growing peppers in the green stalks, there's going to be some peppers in this one too, because I have too many. I am going to try to plant in some of these dwarf varieties, so like the dwarf Greek, and then I have a spicy globe, and then that might be all that I have that's tiny, but I will try to plant them in with these to give some of the same companion planting benefits. So the next one is lemon basil. So this one has a distinct lemon scent to it. It's best used with tea. I would imagine you could also use it in an ice cream, like some sort of lemon sorbet type. The seeds don't smell like anything, but I had to check. But yes, the leaves are definitely have a lemon thing going on with them. Last year we used it a lot in lemonade, obviously lemon, and then tea. We would make iced tea with it, so you come out and you harvest it and then you make like hot tea, but then you cool it down, put it over ice, and then you have iced tea sweetened with some honey, and it's really lovely. So the next one is lettuce leaf. This one is this one, the leaves are really large, like leaves of lettuce, and this one is really good for sandwiches, and you can replace, if you like to eat lettuce wraps, you can use the basil as the lettuce because the leaves are so big. It's Whenever I made that chicken sandwich last year, I used the lettuce leaf basil on the sandwiches. It was so good. I like it because it's just these gigantic basil leaves out here. It's fun to come out and harvest them because they're, again, it's just a visual difference outside in the garden. Gives a little bit of variety. But they are great on sandwiches and for wraps and, you know, things where you need larger basil leaves, not something that's like diced or shredded or cut up. The next one is lime basil. I attempted to grow lime basil last year, but it didn't germinate. I direct sowed it into the raised beds, and I think whenever I grew the beans, they kind of overshadowed those basils that I attempted to grow. So I'm going to start them indoors this year and then transplant them out. I imagine this one is another one that will be best served as tea, but we'll see. And I am not exactly sure. Okay, it says this has a classic Italian basil aroma, mamolo. I can't remember if I grew this last year. I'm sure that I did because this is open. But again, this one will be, since it has the classic basil aroma, we'll use this like we would typical basil. And then if I get to the point where I have too much basil, I will just hang some to dry and then crush it up and use it throughout the rest of the year whenever I don't have access to fresh basil right out of my yard. Okay. We're almost through with these guys. I apologize. The next one is Persian. This is another new to me variety. It says this is an Asian, Southwestern Asian type basil. I am not 100% sure what that means. Distinctive aroma, lemony and spice-like. So I'm excited to try it. If it's too citrusy, then it will be relegated to the tea blend, the basil tea blend. Again, the seeds don't smell like anything, but I was just curious. I am one of those people that, because I love basil so much, I will grow any type that I can get seeds for. Another one that I really like, but I don't have the seeds for this year, is purple ball basil. So it's going to be a dark purple basil, but it's a very small, compact plant, and the leaves are very, very tiny. So you don't even need to cut them. You can just come pluck a stem and then just kind of yank them off the stem and use them that way, because since they are so small, you don't have to worry about cutting them up. It does taste great. It's beautiful, and it adds another, you know, more visual interest in the garden. I don't have that one this year, sadly. I am out of seeds for that. So maybe next year I'll be able to grow it again. But moving on to the next one, my current favorite basil is purple ruffles. Now, it doesn't smell as good as blue spice, but whenever it's growing, it's so absolutely stunning that that's why it's my favorite. So it is variegated whenever it sprouts, and it's like a young basil plant, so it's green and purple together. It's so pretty, and it smells so good. It's like, has like a typical basil flavor, but the leaves are ruffled, so they're like kind of serrated on the edges and a little bit curly and frilly. So really pretty. It's my favorite. I am planting 2 cells of it, but because I put a ton of seeds in there, I'm hoping to have several plants worth. The next basil variety that I am planting is Spicy Globe. This is going to be a dwarf variety, I think. Judging by the name, the Globe, I think it is a dwarf compact variety. The spicy makes me think that it might be more intensified flavors. We'll see. I didn't successfully grow this last year. This was one that I direct sowed in the raised beds, and I think the beans kind of overshadowed them and they never came to fruition. But sweet basil, oh, that's the one that flew. Hold on one second. So sweet basil, this is just another variety. It's just going to be very, very similar to the Genovese basil. It might even be the exact same. I'm not 100% sure. These seeds came whenever I got one of these green stalks. I can't remember which one, because basil grows really well in green stalks. So I'm just going to plant what I have left of this. The next one is Thai basil. So if you have had any sort of Thai curries or even Vietnamese pho, this is the basil that they typically put in it. Its leaves are a little bit firmer. It's not as tender as Genovese basil. Its leaves have more structure, they're more firm, so they hold up really well to being cooked in those soup type preparations. And it has a slight bit of licorice flavor, not overpowering because I can't stand the licorice flavor, but it's very, very slight. So it is different than the Italian basil, but it's still very good. I actually still have some drying over my dining room window that I need to take down and crush because it's not basil season yet. And then the last one is the Tulsi holy basil that I mentioned. I'm growing this for the medicinal benefits, especially the lower anxiety part. Goodness, the adhesive on these seed packs is absolutely bonkers. Okay, it's like stuck on my thumb. All right, very, very tiny seeds. These are smaller than the other seeds even. Don't know if you could even see. It's very small. I don't know if you could even see how small that was. But also doesn't have a scent, but that's okay. So I'm planting 2 cells of this one as well. Okay, that's it. I just need to press them into the soil and call that a day. So all of this 32 cells, 31 cells of this is basil, 17 different types of basil. Like I said, I'll plant whatever basil I can get my hands on because I love it all. And if it turns out to be too much, I can share with family and friends. That's the fun thing about seed starting, is if you start too many, you can give them away to other people who also have gardens, or you can convince other people to garden and then give them plants to start their gardens with. That is that. Okay, so that's it. The basil's planted. I'm going to get it inside with a humidity dome and on a heat mat. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I do hope that you found the companion planting portion of this video informative. If you did like what you saw, please feel free to like and subscribe and do all those little YouTube-y things. I do have that goal this year to try to reach 1,000 subscribers, so every little bit helps, and I appreciate you all so much for watching today. And until next time, I hope you guys go find a way to get those hands dirty.